The first principle of a dynamic culture is to make culture a priority. Most organizations don't. Peter Drucker famously said, "Culture eats strategy for breakfast." Think about that for a moment. Culture eats strategy for breakfast. How much time do we spend on strategy? How much money and effort and energy do we spend on strategy? And how little time, effort, energy, intentionality do we spend on culture? But culture eats strategy for breakfast. The greatest management guru of all time tells us. So where are you when it comes to culture? How much of a priority is culture for you? Some people say, well, I'm not a leader. It's not my responsibility. There's nothing I can do about it. None of that is true. Every book has a promise. When I sit down to write a book, I ask myself, okay, what is the promise of this book? What should the reader be absolutely convinced of by the time they come to the end of the book? With a culture solution, the promise of the book was twofold. The first one was that you should make culture a priority. By the end of the book, I wanted you to be convinced that you, as an individual, should make culture a priority. The second thing I wanted you to be convinced of is that no matter what your role is, okay, whether you're the CEO or a mid-level leader or a janitor or a frontline worker, you can make an enormous difference in your culture. Very often, the reason cultures deteriorate is because many people or most people believe, well, that's the job of leadership. But the reality is, I have seen an incredible amount of organizations where the most influential person in the organization, from a culture point of view, was the janitor or the receptionist sitting at the front desk. They exert incredible influence over the organization. Why? Because they decide to make work fun. They decide to make this a fun place to work. They decide to take an interest in people. They decide to invest in the culture every day, regardless of whether somebody says to them, it's your job to make this a great culture. And so it's our responsibility to decide what role we are going to play in creating a dynamic culture in our organization. The first principle of a dynamic culture is to make culture a priority. Don't wait for somebody else in your organization to make culture a priority. Decide today that you are going to make culture a priority and do something, however small, each and every single day to improve the culture of your organization.